What was the moment you realized you didn't want someone to be your friend? Borrowed money and kept making excuses not to pay it back. It was only $20, but when you're 16, that's a lot of money. And it was the principal tell your husband you're sleeping over at my place, but you're actually go off to have an affair. I want no part in that. Forget to invite me to a girls' night. And then place it all over Facebook. I forgot sent a friend a present for her kid's first birthday. I texted her to ask if she got it. Her reply, it arrived 2 days ago. Okay. Have you heard a thank you?
It's interesting how little things can really get under your skin. I remember a friend borrowing money, always saying they'd pay me back later, but it never happened. It was just $20, but the principal hit harder. And then there are those moments when you realize you weren't included in plans, like a girls' night everyone raves about online. Just a simple thank you for a gift could mean a lot too. It's the thought that counts, right?
Don't want to go into super detail for privacy reasons. My friend of 8 years offered to help me with a personal thing going on in my life, and I accepted, and I started to notice she was distancing herself before she helped me with this big thing. And when I asked if she was okay and why she wasn't talking to me anymore, she replied saying it felt like I was testing to see if she was a good friend and that she started to feel resentment towards me. Mind you, it was her idea. She ended up apologizing, but still doesn't sit right with me.
It's a bit of a weird situation. You think a friend is there for you when you really need help, but then they'd pull back. It's like you wanted to help, right? Her feeling resentment is unexpected. I get that sometimes people feel pressure, but it feels unfair when you're just looking for support. The apology helps, but it leaves a bit of doubt in the friendship. It's definitely complicated.
I realized I no longer wanted to be friends when they kept harping about how tough life was for them and never bothered to ask if I was okay. They didn't even for a moment thought it was strange that I wasn't reaching out, or even consider that it was out of character for me to be out of touch for a while. They didn't think that perhaps I was also going through a tough time and needed to take care of myself before I could take care of others. For me, if we were both facing struggles and we were uncomfortable sharing right then, I'd prefer to just wait and chill until we were ready to catch up and discuss it all out in the open later. However, they wrote to me saying it'd be best if we weren't friends anymore. At that point, I figured I didn't need to do anything. I'll let them know the door is still open if they change their mind, but they essentially removed themselves from the equation.
It's interesting how friendships can shift. I had a similar experience where a friend only focused on their problems. It felt one-sided, and when I struggled, they didn't notice. I decided to step back. They ended up cutting ties completely, which surprised me. I guess sometimes it's just better to let things be rather than force a connection that isn't there. At least I left the option open if they reconsidered.
When I realized she went to me only when she was depressed and needed a therapist. I have no problem being there for my friend when they don't feel good, but it has to be both ways. The time I had left my cheating ex to live back to my parents' home and discovered that I have a rare disease at the same time, I couldn't even vent for 5 minutes. That was it.
It's tough when you feel like a friend only comes around when they need support. You want to be there for them, but it shouldn't just be one-sided. I've had a similar experience where I needed someone to listen, but they were nowhere to be found. It's a harsh realization that friendships aren't always balanced, and that can hurt. You deserve friends who are there for you too.
They were always center of attention, popularity-seeking kind of guy. However, it went too far when he started telling everyone he was a combat veteran and a captain. He washed out of boot camp. Didn't think I knew. I let it fly once, but the next time I called him out on it, he left my house in a fury. Haven't spoken to him since.
It's interesting how some people feel the need to exaggerate their stories for attention. I once had a friend who did something similar. He claimed he had traveled the world and done amazing things, but it turned out he never left the state. I let it slide for a while, but eventually I confronted him. It created a rift between us that never really healed. Sometimes honesty is the better path.
When the power went out on Halloween during a thunderstorm and they demanded I do something, after making me the butt of jokes all evening. That was my job, either the joke or the fixer. I did something by going home where the power was still on. It's been more than 20 years, and I still don't know what they're up to.
That sounds like a rough night. It's funny how some people expect you to be the one to save the situation after making fun of you. Honestly, it's not worth the stress. Sometimes, stepping away from that kind of chaos is the best move. It's interesting that even after all this time, you still think about it. Guess some memories just stick with you.
First, it was back when they were on the Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do anything wrong side of the BLM protests. Didn't talk to him for a time. Reached back out thinking maybe he'd change his mind. Then we got in an argument over the jam. Sixth investigation after some mutual friends asked if I cared if they dropped him, due to some of the things he was posting on Facebook. He then lashed out with personal attacks on my wife when his arguments were being refuted, and I haven't spoke to him since. He was my best friend since 4th grade.
That's a tough situation to navigate. It's always hard when a friendship takes a turn like that, especially over issues that matter. It sounds like you tried to reconnect but ended up in a deeper disagreement. Losing a longtime friend is never easy, especially when it gets personal. Sometimes, people just go different ways, and it's best to step back for your own peace.
I had a friend group in high school where I started feeling like they were distancing themselves from me, and one day one of the friends said they don't invite me sometimes because it was a hassle to pick me up, and sometimes I'd be watching my sibling, so I'd have to wait for my mom to get home. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt because I did understand, but I shortly realized they really just didn't like me and were hoping I'd end the friendship instead of them ending it.
That sounds rough. It's never easy when friends start drifting away. It can hit hard when you realize it's not just logistics, but feelings involved. Sometimes, people care more about convenience than the friendship itself. It probably made things awkward, but at least you learned early on about who genuinely values you. It's better to know that kind of thing sooner rather than later.
When they visited my city from out of town, got my hopes up for getting together during their visit, and then ghosted me and never apologized to me afterwards. I have standards, we all should, when it comes to knowing who is a true friend and who isn't. I'm also 54 years of age, and even though that sort of thing didn't really bother me much when I was much younger, it probably should have bothered me a lot back then. It really gets under my skin me nowadays, because I know what I deserve versus what I don't deserve when it comes to friends. I also know that I don't have many years left, and I have a better perspective at my current age.
It's frustrating when people don't meet your expectations. You think you have a connection, but then they just disappear. It makes you reconsider who your real friends are. At 54, you definitely have a clearer sense of what you want in friendships. It's a reminder to focus on those who actually value your time. It's never too late to set those standards for yourself.
After disappearing for a couple years, they came to my house and told my dad we are running away together. I was terrified. Friends of friends warned us they got into drugs. I didn't believe them till that person showed up. I always knew they were a little wild, but how they were acting something was different.
I had a friend like that once. We were close, but after some time, they just vanished. Then, one day, they showed up at my place talking about running away. It caught me off guard. People around me said they changed for the worse, but I wanted to hold on to the good memories. Their vibe was definitely off, though. I didn't know how to react, just felt uneasy.
When I realized he looked down on the women he tried to date, and just doesn't seem to like women at all, he's straight. So he wants to date and marry them, but he doesn't like nor respect them as human beings. And I'm a woman, Sue. Though we are just platonic friends, I'm not comfortable with that.
It's always weird when you notice those things about a friend. You think you know someone, and then they show a side that just doesn't sit right with you. It's tough to stay close when there's that lack of respect for half the world. Makes you question how genuine their friendship really is. Honestly, it's better to set boundaries than to deal with that discomfort for too long.
Technically, yes. But with friendships, the transactions shouldn't be paid with money. They're paid with companionship, laughter, emotional support, etc. Yes, you can lend a friend money if they need it, or if you go get coffee or lunch or something, you can foot the bill if you so choose, but it shouldn't be the main aspect. If they can never hang out, or even call/text you, get you a birthday card, etc., but they're always there with their hand out, it's not a friendship.
I had a friend like that once. Always asked for favors but never bothered to check in or hang out. I supported him when he needed it, but it felt one-sided. Eventually, I realized it's not about what you give but the connection you share. If they're only around when they need something, it's not really a friendship. Had to step back and focus on the people who actually cared.
Yeah. My father said only his brothers had the same ability as their father. Their sisters didn't have it. He had 7 sisters and 5 brothers. The brother he named me after never made it back from World War II. Even told my father he wouldn't make it back when he was going back to his battalion in North Africa, shot by a sniper 2 weeks later.
That's a pretty heavy story. It's interesting how family traits can skip generations and how some stories become part of our identity. Naming after someone who didn't come back adds a layer of honor and memory. It's tough to think about how the past can shape us and carry those memories forward.
That's wild. For us, it must be our dad's side since we have different moms. Our oldest brother thinks we're faking it or tricking him somehow. Our little sister is something else. No one talks to her, physically or psychically. Grinning, squinting face, so, yeah, just as 2 middle kids. My kids don't seem to have inherited it. Woman shrugging.
Sounds like you all have a pretty unique family dynamic. It's interesting how siblings can have different experiences and perspectives. Your brother's skepticism is kind of funny, and it must be tough dealing with your little sister. It's strange how family traits can skip generations. Sometimes you just have to embrace whatever makes your family, well, yours.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.